Can you hear me? All right. Okay, I won't start over because I don't think you missed anything that big. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Okay, sounds good. So as I said, start a little bit early. We're right. And a couple other things that are different on this schedule from what we've seen in the past. We've really taken a concerted effort to make sure we're addressing the needs of our newest teachers. So we've redeveloped and redesigned some of our probationary professional development. You won't really see it on the schedule per se, but those dates I talk about new educators, just a little more support built in directly for them. So excited about that, excited about the schedule, really excited about the fact that we will be back in school, first day with kids, August 29th. So any questions about the schedule?
So the new teacher luncheon is August 21?
18th,
Yes.
21.
Oh, okay.
On this schedule, 21.
So there's two luncheons. There's one that
Okay.
we do as a district, and there's also the union luncheon. So you're looking at two different events.
Okay.
So the one that the board usually comes to is the one on the 18th.
Yes.
That's the one with the Chamber of
Yep,
Commerce.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And then the other, welcoming back the certified staff is,
That's on the 25th, the afternoon of the 25th. So if you'd like to come to that, the afternoon of the 25th, we're working on some of that today. The wellness walk starts right around 11 o'clock at the high school, and then we go into lunch, and then kind of our back-to-school, rally, and then we'll be dismissing from the high school.
so the two things that board members might participate in would be on Fridays.
Yes.
You have the two consecutive Fridays.
All right. All right, any other questions? Hearing none, then we'll move on to the legislative budget recap report. Nick?
Well, we have, I was just checking online. There are 3 people watching. I'm one of them. I'm guessing Tim might be one of them, and maybe, yeah. Oh, so maybe we do have somebody watching. What I just want to do at a very high level, this is a summary that was put together by the SAA, which is the lobbying group of the administrative groups in the state, and they just kind of talked about what are the different pieces that came into play. The revenue limits so essentially going to be increased by $325 per pupil every year, somewhat into perpetuity, unless there's a change in either the legislature or the governor's office or however that works. But essentially, the other thing that was a big one was the low revenue ceiling, or no low revenue limit, is going from 10,000 to 11,000. So for some of those districts, they are allowed to spend $10,000 per pupil. They'll now be allowed to spend $11,000 per pupil. To give you some perspective, our revenue limit in Hudson is about $12,023, somewhere around there. Those revenue ceilings were kind of locked in place back in the mid-90s, I think, and then 93, and then there's been, equivalent increases at different times over the last few years, over the last, I guess, 30 years. But you can see how there was a pretty large discrepancy between districts that way. So the low spending districts have really been trying to fight to get to an even playing field per pupil. The per pupil aid, there's really no change in that. That's how we've been getting aid the last couple budget cycles, has been through per pupil levels versus revenue limits. And the biggest difference between that is our per pupil aid is 100% state aid, comes in 100% state aid. When it's revenue limit, what happens is it's the blend of state aid and property tax. So whatever our ratio is in state aid to property tax, that it follows that same piece. The July 1st estimates are out. As of right now, we're projecting about a $4 million drop in state aid is kind of where we're at. It's a combination of a variety of things, but primarily it's related to our declining enrollment exemption starting to roll off, and so we're seeing that drop in aid. And then also we had tremendously high property valuations last year, so the state looked at us again and said, you're a property-rich district, you can put more on property tax, and so that's been a challenge. no high poverty aid, that's not really affecting us. Mental health, this has been, mental health services, so it's gonna go out on a per pupil basis. This is something we push really hard on with the legislators, because whenever they do competitive grant programs, which is the way this program was before, the bigger the district, the more people you have to write those grants. And so, especially a lot of the smaller districts really struggle because there's nobody else to help with it. You know, Tara had put in a tremendous amount of time in our district putting together the grant, only to, at the very end, in the 11th hour, they decided to say, oh, it's not going to be grant-based anymore, it's going to be per kid, so don't worry about that. But I mean, 100 hours probably trying to put that together, to tell you the kind of amount of time. But the good thing is they did add about $15 million to the overall allotment across the state. So at $25 million or $31 per pupil, we're going to go from about a $60,000 or $70,000 mental health grant to about $165,000 allotment for mental health services. But, you know, as one of the challenges that happens is finding providers to be able to deliver those mental health services as we work through it. Special ed aid, it was the one that was really a disappointment. They were hoping to get somewhere between 45 and 60% reimbursement. We ended up with 33%, so about an increase of about 3% in special ed aid. Just to remind people, we transfer about $8 million a year from our general fund to special ed Fund 27 because it's not fully funded. And so it's a cost for us. Sparsity aid doesn't really apply to us. It has to do with obviously being a sparsely populated district. High cost special ed, high cost transportation. There's some things in there. We do have some high cost special ed aid that we do get reimbursed for as we work through it. Transportation, again, I don't think this is going to impact us a ton. It's primarily for some of the really rural districts in northern Wisconsin. And then the school library aides, they must just have incredible lobbyists because library aid just keeps going up and up and up. And so it's going up $7 million each year. And so to kind of put that in perspective, it's going to go up $14 million over the biennium for library aid, and mental health aid is going up $15 million over the biennium. So it seems kind of odd the way some of that stuff works. So we'll continue to kind of see how this works. But the big thing we're hitting right now is, if you remember kind of that COVID year when we dropped by about 200 and some students in 1 year, that drop had been mitigated over, because it's a 3-year rolling average when they figure out how many kids are in your district. Well, now we're going into that year 3. So now we get that full drop, plus we've had 2 other years of drops. And so that's why we're seeing a pretty big hit to our state aid. And this is kind of that fiscal cliff we've been talking about for about 2 years. So it's kind of starting to come that direction. Any questions about big picture budget recap?
Mr. President, Heather had her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So just 2 follow-up items, and maybe they'll be addressed when we talk about the 23-24 budget, so that's the case, just take a pass. But you mentioned $4 million less. I'm curious how that compares to what we were assuming in our budget. And then special ed aid, that's lower than what we had hoped in our budget. Yes, so when we talk about the budget, will we see how both of those impact then our?
I don't believe we have the new projections yet. Are those done, Bonnie? The new 3-year, the projections are done, but the other stuff is built in now.
Okay. So just big picture, special ed was less than we had thought, and then the $4 million decreased. Was that pretty on par with what we anticipated based on what we knew about enrollment and property valuation?
So that's why last year when we brought the board to not over levy, but to levy for our debt in advance, because we thought our aid was gonna go down, so we did increase that $5 million, so that was what we were thinking.
So that was what we were,
Yep.
close to what we were expecting.
We would anticipate it was going to drop. And it may not be a full 4 million.
Correct.
We'll get is it the August 1st or
August 15th.
August 15th. It'll dial it in a little bit better on August 15th. And then we really don't get the final until like October 1st or something like that. Is it October 15th? And then that's when you guys will approve the budgets that way. So.
Rob, you had a question.
And so back to the special education aid, I mean, early on, weren't there conversations that it was gonna go up potentially dramatically?
Yes.
And like in the last few moments, it seems as if it fell off.
Yeah.
Do you have any
Yeah, I mean, it was, I would say this is not a good budget for public schools. You know, the 325 increase in the revenue limit, I mean, that's nice, it's helpful, it's about 2.5%. And in a normal year, that's good, but when you have really high inflation, that's really a challenge. But you gotta remember, it's a fixed 325 every year, so as the limit goes up, the percentage goes down, you know, so over the course of, let's say, 5 or 7 or 10 years, from it being a 2.5% increase, it's now gonna be maybe a 1.5% increase, which creates some challenges. But the special ed increase, we were anticipating, hoping for no less than a 15% increase, but hoping for 30, and it came out to be 3.3%. And again, the thing that's tough about that, it's a flat dollar amount that they invest in it. And so as costs go up every year, that percentage actually, it goes down because the dollar amount is flat, you know, but it doesn't, they're not saying that they're gonna cover 33% every year moving forward. They're just saying, as it sits right now in this biennium, they'll cover 33% of the special ed cost. But then the following year, it's gonna drop a little bit percentage-wise, same amount of money, just a little bit percentage-wise, and so on and so forth. So, you know, I don't know what exactly, you know, happened with it. I think it was, there was a combination of things that happened, and I mean, there's nice, the certainty of the 325 increase is kind of nice, but that's only there until potentially you could have a change in governors or change in legislatures. It just, it's not it's not zero like we had the last 2 years, but it's by no means a great budget for us from the state level.
Bob?
Nick, will we have visibility into some of the other changes in the budget this year, like a voucher program increase for the state, how that affects districts like ours? Will we be able to gauge that? Like, I've heard complaints that they're kind of hiding, they're making it more difficult for districts to see how much money is going out and not coming back.
Yeah, so you gotta remember the way vouchers work is so they allocate so much money for K-12, and then what they do is they take the voucher program and they take that off the top, and so then what happens is, what you were supposed to get then has to be backfilled with property taxes. So we don't have a lot of voucher, I don't think we have any, that I'm aware of, any kids that live in our resident district that get a private school voucher. But I'm pretty sure our district gets close to $1 million. I don't know, Bonnie, if you have the exact number, but what we're paying for the voucher program, basically what's happening is state aid that we should normally be getting, we're not getting, and so they expect us to put that back on property tax. So,
So I think it used to be line itemed in the equalization aid formula, but
Yeah.
in the last biennium, they took that out. So now they just take it out before and they don't delineate by district how much money you are receiving. So it's not on the equalization formula, so you
Anymore.
can't tell by district.
and that's, you know,
Sounds intentional.
yeah, and the thing with the vouchers, I mean, so secondary vouchers got a 40% increase to the reimbursement. And elementary or I think K-6 vouchers got somewhere between a 15 and 20% increase. And so, you know, that's what's kind of disappointing. So public school kids got about 2.5, 3%. There are some caps in play, but I think in 2025 or 26, I don't know, Bonnie, correct me if I'm wrong, the caps come off the voucher programs, and there's no more caps on the programs. And so I think they'll still have income requirements, but they won't have caps on number of kids that can be a part of the program. So that could really, you know, change the cost associated with those programs.
Any other questions on the budget recap? Hearing none. All right, now we're on to department accomplishments and highlight reports. And first up is the high school. Mr. Ballard.
Well, I'll tell you, is this on? Okay. When you get an opportunity to put all of this together, you realize every year, one, just how well our students perform, and then two, how much you really accomplished throughout the course of the year. So I'm not going to take the time to read everything for everyone, but I do want to highlight a few things that I think that you'll either find important or I quite honestly might think is pretty neat. Starting off with 19 of our seniors completed the AP capstone requirements through submitting work to the College Board for both AP seminar and AP research. That's just an incredible number to have coming out of a high school. Similarly, and I know we had relatively high enrollment this year, but we hit a 5-year high with the number of our students that registered for AP tests with about 670 plus, as well as almost 1,119 exams that were completed by those students. That is a lot of exams. That's a lot of higher level learning and certainly something that we're very proud of. Our business numbers continue to grow. Our business department has really been taking off, and this year, Carrie Henson, the business department, hosted something called Test Drive, in which they partnered with Royal Credit Union on a financial literacy simulation, and we had over 200 students participate in that. Really nice opportunity to just engage our community. We had just a ton of business owners and people coming in with various levels of expertise to walk our kids through some real life applicable business programming. So that was wonderful to see. I want to give a quick shout out also to Caitlin Kochupa. She's our Spanish teacher who has really invested a lot of her own personal time into creating a Spanish club, and now her Spanish Honor Society. She grew it from 7 members last year to 38 this year. So that is a lot of momentum, a lot of just, I think, something to celebrate that doesn't always come your way. Moving forward, I want to make a note, and I know I've shared this with the board before, but school pride and getting kids to really just feel a part of something bigger than themselves is something that we've really been pressing hard upon. And our last 2 senior classes, to be quite honest with you, have just been spectacular about teaming with us and trying to create ways to get kids involved in activities. And so I've just been super proud of the number of students that have been coming to sporting events, whether it be football game or basketball or volleyball, or any of the musicals. There's so many kids you'll just see participating and supporting one another. And similar along those lines, we had the largest homecoming dance. We said in 20 years because that's how far back we could go, but I'm assuming it's the largest ever because prior to that, I don't think we would have ever hit 1,000 students that came. It was crazy in our school that day, 1,000 students. So we brought the King Cold dance back this year, and we also had over 650 students attend the prom, as you know, because we had so many that we couldn't go on the boat once again, which we are making plans for an off-site prom next year, so that is in the works. Similarly, in terms of some of the building initiatives and accomplishments, we put a grading committee together, spent most of the year just having discussions and learning about common grading practices. Just whole staff professional development provided opportunities for learning and support for implementation of really 4 selected grading practices or changes that we really just think that these school-wide grading changes are going to provide some consistency and clarity and communication for students, their families, and our teaching staff. So we're really excited about that. I have 2 more things I'd like to highlight for you. We did add an 11 additional co-taught classes to our schedule in 22-23. For those of you who might need a reminder, not quite sure what that means. It means we're becoming more inclusive with our special ed students and getting them involved not just in math and English now. We're branching out into science and business and agriculture, a lot of other coursework, so that we're really giving them a full experience. And there's just so much research that supports that lends support to that way of teaching as a great practice, as well as some of the benefits that all of our students receive, whether it mean academically, socially, or emotionally. So we're real excited about that. And then finally, just want to wrap things off and just thank everyone for your support for our math and English support classes. We successfully launched that last year. Just a reminder for your for all of you. That's where we have, at any period of the day, we either have math or English teacher available to kids. In the first half of that block, we identify some students that we know could lend some support, and they come and receive a strong intervention with a lower student to adult ratio. And then the second half of that period, it's open to any student that would like to come in and get help at any level for math or English. So it's been a successful launch. This year, we're really, really excited now that we can apply some of the things that we learned last year. So, thank you.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Ballard? Right, Mike?
Hope Kate has
Go
one.
ahead.
I just wanted to say, and not a question, but when our board went through and walked through during the day, when we saw kids learning, along with Congressman Tiffany, honestly, I was in awe of everything that I was seeing going on, because as we know, not every kid is interested in studying a book every day, and what we saw in the home ec,
Yeah.
if that's what we're calling.
Facts.
Sorry.
Culinary
That's my old
arts.
school
Culinary arts.
word of it. And engineering, and it was just so much hands-on learning going on. I walked away and in fact had an appointment this morning, and we were talking about it again, of how amazing it is and how different it is
Yeah.
than when we all went to high school. So kudos, you're doing a great
You know,
job.
yeah, well, it's not me, it's the teachers, right? Like, we just have some fabulous teachers, and I'll be honest, like, they have a lot of support from their instructional coaches and our associate principals. I mean, there's a lot of people that go behind all of that. But it would be great, Kate, if there was somehow, you could capture that for the average person that maybe doesn't get a chance to see what an operational high school like ours looks like throughout the
I
course of the
agree,
day.
because it was night and day going when kids were actually learning and moving about the building, to see that happening versus a tour at night when it's quiet.
Yeah, totally different
So.
feel. Yeah, it's fun.
Great. Thanks
Thank
for your
you.
comment. All right. Thanks for your report. Joe Banky's up now for Hudson Prairie Elementary.
Get this down to my level, Mike. I was gonna start with sharing a little information on some building goals, and then I realized the forward data is unavailable yet to the public, so we'll save that for a different time. And so then I switched my focus to really kind of just talking through a few points on our building theme this year, which is we are connected. And so we built that theme off of last year's, when we really were inviting people back, concentrated on our students, our staff, and our families. And then this year, we really concentrated on, and then how do we bring that service and connection to the community back on top of that? So one unique piece of our building this year is every grade level had a change to their team in some way, shape, or form, with new hires, with some shifting around. And so we really wanted to maintain that connective piece. We did a lot of activities around that. And then some of those community connection pieces, a few of the highlights here, we held our first annual Empty Bowls event, and so we made some ceramic bowls, and we had some silent auction items, and we partnered with some restaurants in the community to put on a meal, donations with that, and so that was a very successful event. We already have a grant written and accepted for next year to continue that event. We did our second annual Fine Arts Night. That's a talent show and a whole lot of artwork that families can come in, very well attended by the community. Again, partnering with local community artists and community vendors that come in and represent at that. And then our art teacher is very invested in our community, Jody Youngman, and so she set up a connection point with Buddy's Bakery this year. And so every month, we displayed between 20 to 40 different students' artwork at Buddy's Bakery, and that was a big to-do to get that out there, and I know students loved to go there and see their artwork, and we got a lot of positive feedback and comments on that. And then the last two are a little bit bigger events where we set up a partnership with JDRF, so Juvenile Diabetes Research Fund, this year, and usually that was a Pennies for Patients event that we did, but we partnered with JDRF because we do have a few students with diabetes in our building, and so we wanted that closer connection and understanding, and so we did a lot to work around that. We set a goal of $2,500 to raise, and in 2 weeks, we raised over $3,500, and so that was a really exciting event, and we credit that to being new and fresh and something different. And then the last piece I'll talk about was our much like many of my colleagues with their elementary buildings, they have a mentoring program going on where they're outreached with the community and bringing in community members. We started our Prairie Pride mentoring program at Hudson Prairie this year, and we had over 15 community members come in from various organizations or just people that were looking to volunteer to connect and get into our building. So again, just really focused on how do we get outside of the building or bring the community into our building to really connect with our kids and come full circle with them after a year of just spending time getting back to everybody after COVID. So that's all I have for you. If you have questions, love to answer.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Next up, we have Dolph with EP Rock Elementary.
Well, I just appreciate that the board gives us the opportunity to kind of reflect and come in and share our highlights and success. One of the things that I do with my staff at the end of the year in May, we actually create this list together. So when we get the highlights and successes, that's the list that my teachers put together. And ironically, one of the things that we've worked on too has been wellness. And one of the big brain-based wellness pieces is actually know your why, right? Why do you get up every day? But then if you spend time each week reflecting on that, what actions you've taken around your why, you tend to be happier. So we kind of did this at the end of the year, right? We reflected on all the things that we were proud of and to be able to share out. So thank you for that. So I'll just start first with the school goals. I'll connect mine to ones that aren't currently related to the forward exam, so we're good that way. But we had a baseline at the end of last year of 69% of our students meeting our grade level expectations in reading, set a goal at 75%, and we had 76% of our students at the end of this year meeting their instructional reading goals, so that was great. We also had a couple ways to look at our social emotional goals, and I'll focus more on that 89%. And so we had a goal of 89% of our students having 1 or 0 office discipline referrals during the year. So if you think about that, if they're not coming to my office, or if they only have 1, they're meeting our expectations pretty well. And our baseline was 87%. We were able this year to have 89% of our students either having 0 or no office discipline referrals. That tells you a lot about kind of what the atmosphere would be for the building, what type of learning is able to happen, and the type of self-regulation students are having this past year. So that's really exciting too. As far as actions that we took, that kind of gets to our collective commitments. We tried to be a little more focused this year, so we got them down to 5. They're all related to our strategic plan. So they're either around student learning. So if you look at the first one, professional learning communities will probably always be on here because we know it's the highest leverage thing that we can do to work together to plan and instruct our students. The other ones have to do with staff and our families. We differentiated the coaching cycles for teachers. We looked at how we could look at cohorts of students and making sure that we're gauging how all learners are doing. And then we really worked to connect with parents with 2 positive communications home this past year, and then making a commitment every day to greet and say goodbye to our students. So that was some of our collective commitments. I'd like to highlight 3 of our actions. I'll start with the second bullet point, which is our peer helpers. So we had 63 4th and 5th graders that were matched up with younger students to play a game or help with math and reading, and it really was for engagement. And it's just great to see not only that first kind of 10 minutes of the day when we're starting the school day and having these students spread out throughout the building, but also when they're meeting each other in the hallways and waving at each other, at passing time. But the other thing that I love is it gets to our older students that are helping with it, and they're being able to be servant leaders in our building and not waiting to be in middle school or high school as adults to get that opportunity. The second one is actually the 4th bullet point, the 4th bullet point that I have up there. And that is, I had 24 students this year that were involved in sharing about their culture and language on our school news. So we had Arabic, Hmong, Chinese, and Spanish words of the day throughout the year. And then we also had, the student body then practicing those words, which was great. And our English language teacher did a lot of work with that, helping to facilitate it. Finally, the last one is the last bullet listed on here. Nick talked a little bit about mental health earlier. And we've really had to kind of be innovative and creative on how we meet the needs of our students. So we've had regular ed paraprofessionals for decades in our district supporting reading and math for students that need more in those areas. And we took our current staffing and we just shifted focus for one of those staff members. So instead of providing intervention in reading and math, this person was providing behavioral interventions, push-in supports, interventions in her office, and meeting with kids throughout the building. And what it led to is those students being more successful and students being able to learn more in their classrooms and teachers being able to teach more too. So we were really excited about that and how well it went in the first year of implementation. And the good news is it didn't cost any more money. It was just doing some reallocation of some duties. So those are just three I would like to highlight. Any questions about other things I didn't cover or anything I talked about?
Any questions for Principal Schmidt? All right, seeing none. Yes? Heather?
Actually, I do. So I think you have the school probably with the most languages in our district? Or you have
Probably
a
at the
lot. I think
elementary,
you have a
yep,
lot.
yes.
I mean, how much, and give us a sense for how much of a, how much that requires different work, especially at lower levels when you've got students who presumably then, maybe, I shouldn't presume, students who might have limited, or parents who might
Yep.
have limited English
Yep.
proficiency.
Well, we have some really good things coming now that will be helpful. So the Parent Square is actually going to allow us to push out communication in the language that families want. So that's a really good piece. In my building, it looks a couple different ways. So there's co-teaching that's going on. So our English language teacher is actually going into the classroom and might be providing guided reading instruction while the teacher is providing guided reading instruction, while also providing pull-out instruction for students that need more intense work with the English language. So. But you're right, we have a pretty high population of students that are receiving English language support in our building.
What about at conference time? Like, how do we help teachers and parents?
Yeah, so
connect
that's an
together?
ongoing piece, so there's the need for translating paperwork is important. We're working on that right now with student services. So that's an added piece, so our English language teachers sometimes help with interpreting, but again, they don't know all the languages. That's why some of the technology that we're implementing now is really important, to be able to send information home in the language that parents have checked off on Skyward. So technology is really helping us recently too.
Mr. President, I just wanted to say it's so exciting to hear about the co-teaching that's going on at both the elementary and at the high school. You know, you read about other districts or hear how students who are EL students get stuck in this track. They never get to be in classrooms with a wider array of students. Same with special ed students, so that the district is following that research and doing what's best for all the students is just wonderful.
One of our highlights too was students graduating out of special education or for the need of EL services, so.
Awesome.
Great report, thank you. Next up, we have Rivercrest. Kim?
So this is my second year at Rivercrest. So our building theme this year went from our PBIS team of you have a place here, and we did the hashtag you have a place here. And then as a staff, we did a book study on the Coffee Bean book about talking about your lens and what lens do you want to view things at. And then we kept coming back to that. Our theme, very similar between the elementary schools and then going up to the high school, is just that community building, getting everybody to feel that they were we're working together for common goals. So a lot of the work that we did this year that started with our academic goals, social emotional goals, but digging deep went to supporting building that community sense. So one of the things Joe was talking about at Prairie, this was their first year as a mentoring program. This was our second year doing a mentoring program. So I worked with Anna Lerndahl, my school counselor last year. We had 5 mentors last year, and this year we doubled that and had 10. So I don't know how you got 15, but we're working on surpassing. So we'll keep working on that. But what I did do was I did bring some pamphlets in case anybody was interested. I'll put those here to spread the word on that. So looking at just bringing the community into our buildings and just bringing them back alive. One of the things, other element that I'd like to, or action I'd like to highlight, is our journey to Hawaii. So one of the things that we noticed was just getting students to have that love of reading and trying to get them to want to pick up those pick up a book and want to, and be excited about finishing the books. So we built a journey to Hawaii. I think the kids at first thought we were going to take them all to Hawaii, but we had different virtual excursions that we brought into the lunchroom. So as the kids came to lunch, as they had incremental steps. So it's 4,000 miles, about 4,000 miles to get to Hawaii. We equaled that to minutes read, and we surpassed that. And our students read 11,761 minutes instead. So we actually went there, back, and now I think we're still waiting there. But we had, in the lunchroom, they were able to travel to a pineapple plantation. They had a tour of Pearl Harbor. They went whale watching. They went snorkeling. And then it led to an all-school celebration where we had a luau, like just a fun mile run. And we said, I think they were really excited about getting to Hawaii, and then they ran a mile that day. But we had snow cones, and it was, but again, it was the kids coming together for a common goal. We had the fifth graders were out there cheering on the kindergartners, so we had partner classes that worked together. And as they surpassed the goal, then we added different incremental things so that the top grade level got to vote on who they wanted to have a pie. We did a coconut cream pie, Hawaii, but they wanted the pie in the face. And then the top class got to vote on who got to put the pie in the place and pie in the face. And it ended up being our custodian was voted in, our head custodian, Blake. He's tall, big guy, and he was willing to have a pie in the face for the kids. So we did on location with our Rivercrest reporter and surprised him with this pie. But the kids were so excited just to participate and come together. So, you have your academic goals, you have your social emotional goals, but just that fun that you have on a day-to-day basis. I hope that our actions and steps kind of highlight that. And I think that you can hear that, and just hearing the things that everybody's doing and they're building in that common goal, I think it just is very exciting. So thank you for having the opportunity. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that. And feel free to pass these around. And Rivercrest has a mentoring program as well. Are there any questions at all?
Any questions for Rivercrest? All right, well, thank you very much. Shannon Sexy, you have two schools. It's your choice, which one.
Jamie, as Shannon's coming up, I can't help but think we should make sure that the Rotary Club knows that we have mentoring opportunities in so many of our schools. I don't know that folks know that program has expanded, and that would be a really good group to make sure that they are aware of that.
And we've had a couple of churches too, if you reach out to churches that inquire about that. I'll start with Holton. So this is my second year actually being principal at two buildings. So it's interesting for me when I'm doing highlights, how many things really that I've been able to do to keep kind of in common with the two buildings, but also at the same time, each building having their own unique traditions and things that are special to them too. So I'll start with one academic highlight. Like we said, forward, we're not able to give out forward yet, but 86% of our students at Holton, their reading levels met or exceeded grade level. That's a pretty high percentage. So academically, I'll kind of skip over the goal actions and kind of get to the fun things too, the school highlights. This is the same for all elementaries, I believe, but Okello Sam, he's a drummer from Uganda. He's a drummer, a musician, a drum maker. He's a storyteller, a dancer, and he visited all classrooms at North and at Holton, and kind of just shared his passion for music, and the kids talked about, Sharka probably did too, but the kids talked about Okello Sam for weeks. Another cool thing this is for North Hudson and Holton, we had a Destination Imagination team that included students from both of my schools that attended the national competition. And then at Holton, we did a reading challenge, but we just went to Alaska. That was 3,000 miles, so Rivercrest, you went a little further than what we did. But we didn't do minutes, we did miles. So approximately 3,000 miles, we figured 3,000 books would get us to Alaska, and we did very similar things, and we did make it to Alaska. Not back. Not back yet. And then we did the HPA, our parent association. We did bring the bazaar back to fall, which went over very well again, and they sponsored the first STEAM night, which I've been telling them at North, that's gone over really well, and we've had a big attendance rate, and so Holton had its first STEAM night, and that was very well attended. As far as traditions, the Holton Garden Club, that is something that I have found very special since being there. You don't realize we have a group of, they're master gardeners, and they come every Thursday to the school, and every student participates in it. It's a choice, but every student chooses to go out during their recess time and help plant things, harvest things, weed things. So that's a very special thing to Holton, and like I said, all students participated. We have the Holton Talent Show, and let me tell you, over 60 students participated in this talent show. And it is so neat to see, you hear kids talking about hockey, or you see kids with their jerseys, whatever it is that they do, but to see them tap dance or tell jokes, or, some of those things that you would not, archery, see them do things that you would never get to see them during the day. That was special, and I would invite you to attend it next year. It's good entertainment. And then in the winter, we do our all-school skate, and in the spring, the kite day. And those are just opportunities for families to come in. We have a lot of families that come in and skate and fly kites in the spring. So those are some of the fun traditions for Holton.
Questions on?
Questions for Holton?
All right. So what's new at North?
What's new at North? So again, I would say that percentage of students' reading levels meeting or exceeding grade level expectations, that's at 85%, is something that I'd like to highlight. Also a decrease, we had a group of students who saw me a lot last year, a certain grade level, and we had a decrease in 43% of those office visits with that same cohort of kids. So we did a lot of work with the school counselor and with the teachers to get that crew school ready. And then as far as the highlights, in addition to Ocala Sam and that destination imagination, we had a really cool thing here. North Hudson became a champion of inclusion school through the Special Olympics of Wisconsin. So what that means is we have to check certain boxes and do certain things in order to have this, to be a champion of inclusion. And basically what that is increased inclusivity in 3 areas: inclusive sports, youth leadership, and whole school engagement. So those are the areas that we put a lot of work into to earn that. And then in addition, with special education teachers, I noticed it on a couple of other reports too, but it didn't necessarily get talked about, that our special education teachers this year put a whole lot of time and effort and energy into planning a neurodivergent week. And so all throughout that week, throughout all of our elementary schools, we highlighted different differences. And it was the same things, same topics. They basically planned the activities, planned the information, had everything ready to go for teachers. So that was really cool for all of it, all of the elementaries. And then, one thing that I would like to point out, so we partnered with, our parent group at North Hudson partnered with the Zephyr Theater in Stillwater this year, because we had just had bad luck with Prairie Fire canceling on us each year. So they partnered with the Zephyr, and that was a unique experience for the kids. It was a pretty huge production, and part of the production is wanting to put it on a big stage. So they performed The Lion King at North Hudson for parents and for students, but then they were able to do it at the high school in the evening. And that was very well attended, and they made a little money, so that was kind of a big thing. And then our traditions, we did our 3rd annual STEAM night that just keeps getting bigger and bigger every year. And then hosting the Rhinestone Raiders. We continue to do that every year too for our students.
Any questions for North Hudson? Yes.
I just want to say thank you. I know it seems like a lot to be a principal at two separate schools and going back and forth. And as a Holton parent, it feels like you are our principal. It doesn't feel, it's clear you know all the students, you remember everybody's names. And so I'm just very impressed at
Thank you.
handling all of that.
Yeah,
So
thank you. I've got a lot of support in doing that too, but it was definitely easier after 2 years.
Yes, Molly.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you kudos for the special recognition from Special Olympics. I know just having had my kids go to North Hudson, it's a longstanding tradition of special ed being there and integration. And kids, these are our friends and these are the people we play with. And I think it's just such a great, the way we interact with people really matters. So
Yeah, thank
kudos
you.
to you guys.
Thank you. And this, part of what our special education team has done this year, which has been really good for our students and for our staff, is communication. We have such a wide range of ways that our students communicate, and even when they communicate with devices, there's probably 8 different devices that do so, but the common language is the same. And so we did like core words of the week. So every week, the teachers, the staff, the kids kind of knew what the core words were, so that when we interacted with students with different communication devices, we knew kind of which words to focus on, which really kind of brought things together in a unique way, too. Yeah.
Very good. Any other comments or questions for Shannon? All right, thank you for your reports.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all for your building reports. Now we're on to the last report of all of the
Yes,
departments.
last but not
Human
least,
resources.
right? Okay, so looking back at the 2022-23 school year for HR, it was a year to reflect and to focus on increasing engagement with staff, similar to what we're hearing from the buildings, which to me and my department is really about finding authentic opportunities to connect with staff. Certainly, we do our normal work throughout the year, 1,850 background checks. A lot more than usual because of the insurance claims. Substitute staffing, coordinating over 112 FMLA leaves, but really our year began with the hiring and onboarding of over 70 certified teachers in August of 2022. It was by far the most we've hired in one year, and it was a lot. It was a good year to focus on what is and what is not working with our hiring, our onboarding processes, our engagement efforts throughout the year. In terms of our engagement, our Cheers for Peers program continues to be popular with staff, and we've added components to it over time, such as personal delivery to classrooms, like during the school day. So Sarah would go from person to person, interrupt the class, and make a big to-do about their teacher or their that employee getting a cheer from one of their peers. So that was really fun. We want to make sure that staff know how special they are. Also, our Staff Family Fun Night doubled in size this year compared to last year, and integrating Hudson Lead members into the activities really went over well. Kids love seeing their principals there, and coworkers from across the district all hanging out together was awesome, and we heard fantastic feedback, and it's a favorite night of the year for us. Whether it's a welcome back walk, the back to school barbecue, or the recognition banquet, we're becoming known for our party planning in HR, and I'm pretty darn proud of that. With these events, we strive to show staff that we see them, we value them, and we celebrate them. Don't get me wrong, we do the tough work too. That's the job. But the celebrating and supporting of staff, that's my why, my passion. And I'm grateful to continue this work going forward. Those are my highlights.
Great job on the brevity, but also a good job on overall on highlighting the positives. So is there anyone have questions for HR? But anyway, we enjoy the Cheers for Peers recognitions and your breathless reports on those. All right. Thank you for your report. And now this puts us into the action portion of the agenda. We have our consent agenda. I'll accept a motion with the language pursuant to the
Mr. President,
notice.
I move approval of the consent items and that the Chief Financial and Operations Officer be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $3,586,456.96.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Megan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda and the expenditures are approved. Next up is the second reading of Teaching and Learning Policies, Part 7.
Hey, your policies and they go around.
Yeah.
Pretty obvious when you don't know what's going on.
This is the second reading, third time you've seen it. No changes since you've seen it last time, so we're ready to roll.
Okay. Any questions on this? This is Part 7. Again, it's mostly having to do with student records and counseling program. The student organizations. Some of these are renumbering, but is there a motion to approve that second reading?
So moved.
Second?
All right. Motion by Heather, second by Molly. Any further discussion?
Mr. President,
Yes,
just out of curiosity, policy 383.1,
383.1.
service animal, yeah, the one with the miniature horse. Does that have to stay?
It's actually required by law,
Get out of town.
no, it specifically calls them out.
We're using mobility, so actually with that, maybe using a wheelchair, many horses can be trained to help them navigate school. So it's, we don't make that stuff.
God bless you. Thanks.
But I appreciate your effort, Rob, in trying to reduce red tape, but it's, if it's state mandated, it's state mandated. But see all the other deletes we have on there, we have lots of deletes on there, of things that, are incorporated elsewhere or just weren't deemed to be needed by WASB or recommended by WASB, so. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the second reading of teaching and learning policies, Part 7, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Thus ends the nay. All right, very good, got that.
Move to adjourn.
After 2.5 years, that was worth waiting for, I guess. So, final financing for the referendum projects. I guess we have some good news, is that right?
We do have some good news. So in May, the board took action to approve bond anticipation notes. So basically, it held a spot until we could lock into rates. So we did borrow the 29 million, and then on July 12th, we locked in our rates, and we only, we took the 5 million that we borrowed last year as part of that levy, paid that off, and only had to do long-term borrowing of 24 million. So some good news, we did do our Moody's bond rating, and we are still a AA1. There's only 3 other districts in the state that have a better bond rating than Hudson, so that's really impressive. Our all-inclusive cost, 4.1%. When we did our projections, we were projecting 4.75%, so that was a savings in there. And then total interest savings from what we anticipated was over $4.7 million over the duration of the bonds. So we did lock in. This is our new debt schedule. So very successful and very good for the district.
And approximately a year from now, we'll be under 20 million owed on the principal.
Correct.
Yes. Heather?
So I just want, as I'm looking at this, page 3 of 11, and there's the phase 1 and the phase 2, so I'm confused. Like, was phase 1 preliminary and phase 2 was what we actually did? Is that what we're looking at then?
So phase 1 was what we did in May, so we had to give, the board had to give Kate and Jamie permission to lock in, so we had to do bond anticipation notes. So it kind of held the place, and then once we got the rates that we wanted, we locked in. So we basically refunded those, and then we'll use the additional 5 million that we had in our, from debt service last year to pay that 5 million off.
Got it. So that, where it says due 12/5/23, that was if they had stayed in place.
Yep.
But in fact,
Correct.
we have satisfied that and we have a new set. Okay,
Correct.
thank you. That was my
Yep.
question.
And there was some interest that we made then since May?
There wasn't a lot, but there was interest, yeah.
Yeah.
I could get that information.
But it's
Yep.
it's not,
Our overall interest, what we're anticipating, our overall interest from the proceeds is being over $1 million, I
Yep.
think.
Yep.
Because now we've locked in a rate, we have possession of the funds. It's been invested. When I say invested, it's basically CDs and
Correct.
bonds. And then we get the interest on that, but that has to be used on the projects. So,
Not a bad time to have millions of dollars in CDs.
yes, this is good. So Bonnie and her team did a great job on this, and Brian came through for us at Barrett. And again, it's just another illustration that shows that we don't borrow money the way most people borrow money, because people think of rates being really bad right now, which you're trying to get a 30-year mortgage, yeah, it's about 7+%, but collective rate, because our effective rate is basically looking at the 20 years worth of bonds and adding up all of the interest and dividing it out. So, I think the district's in a really strong financial position. And as you can see, even on the existing Fund 39 debt, the 93 million, we've done a pretty big job trying to pay that off as well.
All right, but no action to be taken, it's just informational. All right, annual approval of academic standards, that does require action.
This does, yep. This is one of those things that annually we have to go through, and it's an important process. So academic standards define what we want students to know and what we want them to be able to do. They're articulated by grade level and by content areas. So in 7th grade social studies, this is what we want students to know and be able to do, and so on and so forth. And get a lot of support from the state in terms of the development of these model academic standards. But one thing I want to make clear, they do not define our curriculum. The standards aren't the curriculum. They're very important, and they're part of the curriculum process. But we go through a process of prioritizing those standards. So our teachers and leaders work on a process of defining which are the most important standards that have the greatest leverage. We design our curriculum to meet those, but they don't define our resources or anything like that. They simply provide the outcomes. Annually, DPI goes through a process of renewing, revising, and reviewing these standards. And you can see on one more slide, those are the revisions that will be happening next year. There's the first cohort and the second cohort. So you can see, for the most part, they're kind of on track, meaning you see 2017s and 2018s. That's a good sign. There was a time when those got very old. The oldest you can see there is 2011 health education, so that one is certainly in need of some review. So we follow that process. One thing that I want to make clear, when we adopt new standards, we don't rewrite the curriculum. What we do is we spend the time between the adoption of the standards and then the implementation of new curriculum, reviewing those standards. We wait for the process to come through, usually about a 6-year process for each content area, and then once we catch up to that point, we implement and incorporate the new standards into the next iteration of that curriculum. So tonight, what we'd be looking for is a motion to maintain the Wisconsin Model Academic Standards as the standards for our school district. Questions?
Heather?
So Dave, can you remind me on that slide with the listings of the state standard revisions, the dates, I mean, that is the state's process, so the state last updated these standards in this state, so when we get to the point where we're looking at our curriculum and looking at the state standards, that would be the most, I mean, that's when the most,
Exactly.
that's the most current state review of the standards upon which our own review then would be based.
Exactly. So take the first one on the list, computer science. So when we adopted computer science standards, since 2017, the annual adoption was the same set of standards. When they're reviewed and revised, then the next adoption would be that new set of standards we then incorporate into our curriculum.
Thank you.
But the state doesn't necessarily renew that on 6-year basis like we do ours.
That is correct. So some are reviewed and revised more frequently. Sometimes things change where they'll accelerate the revision, and sometimes they sort of fall off the radar and they get passed on a few cycles.
Very good. Other comments, questions, or do we have a motion to approve? The recommendation for maintaining the Wisconsin academic standards? All right.
Second.
All right. Motion by Bob, second by Kate. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. All right, next up, the 2023-2024 budget update. Bonnie.
So, I kind of started this letter with, it has been a whirlwind. We kind of had like no information, we're not going to get any information, and then we got everything, I felt like, in like 2 days and trying to get a preliminary budget for you. So I think we're where we are. We're still doing, I mean, we have some negotiations tonight, so that'll help us finalize some more numbers, but we wanted to get you a preliminary budget to get you a good feel of where we're at. So, state, and we went through some of this, but I just thought I'd go through it again. So state increases the revenue limit calculation, $325 per pupil. Again, that wasn't exactly what we hoped for, but it's better than zero, so we're excited about that. The per pupil aid per student did not change, so that will remain at that $742 per pupil. The special education categorical increased to 33.3%, so again, not where we want it, but it is an increase, so that's a good thing. Our July 1 equalization aid, as Nick had indicated, our aid did decrease about 4.2 million. We did anticipate that last year. That was the reason we had those conversations about increasing the levy for that 1 year to kind of not have this fiscal issue this year. We do anticipate that that will go up. One, we think that we didn't spend our entire budget this year, so that's one good thing. So that will reduce our negative tertiary aid. And then once we get our third Friday count. So again, we get that on October 15th. We'll be able to update you on that. We estimated when we developed the budget property valuation increase at 5%. Doing that, the mill rate is projected to remain relatively level. I'm guessing we're going to be over 5% just based on historical trends, but we wanted to be conservative. So 5% is where we were at. Last year, we were at 16.6%. So just to give you some, which was kind of an anomaly. It was really high. Staffing reductions we included into the budget. That's on that third page. That 708,000. Those were positions that were reduced this year due to attrition. We have estimated employment settlements based on what's been happening the last couple of weeks. So those are updated into the budget. Health insurance premiums did increase 8%, but there was zero increase for dental insurance. Those have been updated in the budget. And then we also included spending out the remaining of our ESSER 3 money, that 1.1 million we have unclaimed. So that will also be utilized in the budget. So then the next sheet is, I look back kind of what you have done. So this was kind of a breakdown of the preliminary revenues and expenditures. I think we highlighted most of them. I think, some good things, open enrollment in, if you see, we're estimating 1.6 million, open enrollment out is at 1.2. So that's about a $300,000 increase. We have students choosing to come to Hudson as their home district. So that's good news. There is one thing down lower on expenditures, the transfer for special ed. So for the last 2 years, that has been budgeted about $1 million over what the actual transfer has been. So we have updated that to be more in line with what we're anticipating the actual transfer to be. That has kind of indicated why we've had money going into the fund balance, because that's been over budgeted as an expense. So it seems for the last 2 years, we've been almost within $200,000 of that mark. So we did adjust that this year to make that more accurate. The bottom are just, I think I summarized all that. And then the third page would just be the positions that you've seen previously. Those would be the staffing reductions due to enrollment. So again, that might change based on we're watching enrollment numbers in classes, but as of right now, that's where we're at.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Can you give a brief explanation, this was a great update, by the way, of what the tertiary aid is again and why it's negative? I can't remember.
Sure. So the state aid, there's 3 levels that they fund you, and it basically, in its simplest terms, defines a certain amount of property value per pupil at each level. If you get over their level, they basically take aid away from you as a district. And so because our property value per pupil is so high, we lose aid because of that.
And that's part of what's going down.
Correct.
This year as property values
Well, property values are going
went up, so the tertiary aid is going more negative.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. President?
Yes, Rob?
So as I recall, the staffing reductions, we had several positions that were open that were not filled. Is that a lot of the staffing reduction, just unfilled positions and attrition, or?
So these were actually positions that were, do you want to talk about that one?
They were reduced as part of our staffing process based on enrollment.
Okay.
So we either laid off, or we had resignations, or we didn't fill retired teachers.
A couple of things to point your direction to. The maintenance position, district-wide maintenance, we went from 2 full-time maintenance folks down to 1 full-time district-wide maintenance person. And that was actually a decision we made last summer, so we got that savings last year, and then we'll have it again this year. We did shift a custodian to Fund 50, which is food service, and that's just something we're allowed to do. We are looking at potentially shifting some other things to Fund 80, potentially middle school athletics. We may be able to shift to Fund 80. That seems to be something most districts are doing, which helps take some pressure off the general fund. And then the classroom teachers, as Andrew said, those are all a product of enrollment. So.
And for the most part, those are decisions that are made. The only way we'd go back is if we had some move-ins in the district in a particular area or something.
Yeah, so we've been trying to reduce. We're at, I think, at the elementary right now, 96 sections, I think is what's on the sheet right now. Again, that's almost 21 sections fewer than when I think I got here in 2015. We just have had that, we've had quite a few students down. The middle school is down about 12 FTE, and now the high school is starting to see the reduction as we move through. The other thing we did do is we had 2 assistant principals that were promoted to other positions in other districts. We evaluated those positions and reduced them, the number of days in those contracts, and shaved about $30,000 off of each of those 2 positions as we move forward. So there's about a savings of about $60,000 in administrative cuts as well. So.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I think you maybe answered my question, but to be sure, on first read, it looks to me like there's conflicting numbers, because in the bullet 3, we reference property value growth of 16.6, and then bullet 4, 4, and then 5, we reference 5%. Is it because they're 1 year apart? So the equalization aid is based on like a year ago's data, whereas the mill rate will be more current valuation? Is that why those 2 numbers that you'd think would be the same are different, the 16.6 and the 5?
So the Department of Revenue defines those every year. They'll certify that information. So last year, we locked in at 16.6% property growth. This year, when we cast forward, we're estimating 5%. So this year's state aid will be based on that property value. Does that answer the question?
It'll be based on the 16.8% increase from
Yes,
last year.
yes, I'm sorry.
And
Yes.
Yep. And then the 5%, we're just, as we get ready to, all of our budget assumptions, what Bonnie's saying is, right now, we're making it with another 5% growth, which will really have to do with the mill rate when we.
The next year.
Correct.
The next year out.
It's last year, and we're estimating that number
Yep.
will be 5%.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct, sorry.
But we won't know actual increase in property valuation for the district as a whole until October 15th.
August 15th, we'll get the first number, and then they'll lock it in about November 1st.
Yeah.
Okay. So after actually we set the mill rate, all right. So, which leads me to the next, there's no action here tonight. This is just a progress update based on all the things happening in Madison. But we have one more work session, basically, to work with the budget before we take it to the annual meeting in September.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Is there like a cheat sheet that explains what all these funds are, Fund 80, Fund this? If there is one, I'd love to have access just to understand what it means.
There's actually a 2.5-hour presentation, right, Heather, that you've sat through on how schools are funded?
I have, and I would like the cheat sheet also.
All right, very good. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none. Then last on our agenda is potential ratification of the collective bargaining agreement for the 23-24 school year with certified staff.
Sandra?
Okay, so what we have presented here is the tentative agreement that was reached on July 5th, 2023, with the Hudson Education Association. They have fully ratified it, both overwhelmingly, apparently at the local level, as well as their UNISERV level today. It was a tight timeline between July 5th and today, but they knew the importance of getting it done prior to tonight's meeting, and I thank them for their efforts there. The proposal here is consistent with what the board had authorized the bargaining committee to agree to, which essentially is 4% increase for eligible bargaining members who are below 65,000. Over 65,000, and 5%, additional 1%, for those of 65,000 or less. Did I screw that up? 4% for people above 65,000, 5% for people below 65,000.
Yep.
As well as, given the CPI at this moment, the ability to merge the supplemental pay over the last several years into the base pay to have one total salary going forward into this next school year. So it would be at,
Is there a motion to approve?
I have a quick question
Okay.
first. Does it go without saying that the additional 1% is also prorated?
oh, yes, yeah. And this, yeah, is actually the same language we used last time, and that's exactly how we applied it, was that it's all proration, it's just with the additional 1%, yeah. But yes, it would be prorated in the same fractional amount.
Then I would move to approve this, what do we call it? This collective bargaining agreement as presented.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second by Megan. Any further discussion? Again, should be noted, as Andrea just did, was that this has already been approved by the Hudson Education Association and now just needs board approval. But is there any other comments, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. It's approved, and then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our action meeting.
So moved.
All right. We have a motion by Rob, second by Bob. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Hearing none, we are adjourned.